The wedding invitations scattered across the hardwood floor like autumn leaves, their elegant cream paper mocking me as I watched Sophie's hands deliberately knock over the carefully arranged stacks. Her lips curved into that practiced smile, the same one she'd been using to manipulate my father for the past 8 months. "Oh, I'm so clumsy," she cooed, not bothering to bend down and help me gather the 100-plus invitations I'd spent hours organizing. "Laura, sweetie, I'm sure you can sort these out again. You're so good at managing things." "I'm Laura, and I manage a lot more than just things. I manage my sister's wedding preparations, my father's slow descent into alcoholism, and my growing urge to wipe that smirk off Sophie's face. But right now, I had to manage my temper." "These were in alphabetical order," I said, keeping my voice steady as I collected the scattered cards. "Emma needs them delivered tomorrow." Sophie perched herself on the edge of my father's antique desk, her red stilettos dangling carelessly. "Mark won't mind if they're a little late. He barely knows half these people anyway." "Emma minds. It's her wedding." "Your sister's always been particular, hasn't she?" Sophie twirled a strand of her perfectly highlighted hair, almost obsessive, really, like your mother was. My hands froze over the invitations. Sophie knew exactly what she was doing, dropping my mother into the conversation like a poison pill. I forced myself to keep sorting, even as my fingers trembled with rage. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Need backup? I can be there in 10. Before I could respond, Sophie's heels clicked across the floor. She stopped at the doorway, then turned back. "Oh, and Laura, I noticed you didn't include Caroline Matthews on the guest list. Mark's oldest friend? I took the liberty of adding her." "Caroline isn't invited," I said through gritted teeth. "Dad specifically asked that she not be included." "Did he? Must have slipped his mind when we discussed it last night, over wine." Sophie's smile widened. "He signed the invitation himself. Funny how alcohol affects memory, isn't it? The implications hit me like a slap. Sophie had gotten my father drunk to manipulate him into inviting the woman he'd had an affair with while my mother was dying. The woman whose presence at the wedding would devastate Emma. My phone buzzed again. Maya this time. "Found something about Sophie. Need to talk ASAP." Sophie watched me check my phone, her eyes gleaming with interest. "Your little investigative journalist friend seems quite devoted to you. Always checking up, always digging around." The threat in her voice was clear as crystal. "Get out of my father's study," I said, standing up slowly, "and stay away from my sister's wedding preparations." "Or what, Laura?" Sophie stepped closer, dropping her sugary facade. "You'll tell Daddy, he's too far gone to care. You'll warn Emma, she's too wrapped up in her perfect wedding to notice anything's wrong. Face it, you're the only one who sees me for what I am, and nobody will believe you." She was right. I'd been watching her isolate my father, manipulate my sister, and systematically destroy our family for months. But I had something Sophie didn't know about. Proof. Maya's message burned in my pocket like a lit fuse. "We'll see about that," I said, meeting her gaze. Sophie's smile never wavered, but something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. Good. She should be afraid. As her heels clicked down the hallway, I looked at the scattered invitations, including the one addressed to Caroline Matthews in my father's drunken scrawl. Sophie had just made her first real mistake, and I intended to make it her last. I picked up my phone and texted Maya back. "Whatever you found, I'm ready. It's time to end this." The wedding was in 3 weeks. Sophie had no idea what was coming for her. Maya's coffee sat untouched as she slid her phone across the cafe table. "Look at this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sophie Thompson doesn't exist, at least not before 2 years ago." I stared at the screen, scanning through social media profiles that dead-ended in 2021. "That's impossible. Dad met her at his law firm's charity gala. She works in real estate." "Worked," Maya corrected, pulling up another document. "Every company she listed on her resume either doesn't exist or has never heard of her. And that charity gala? I checked with the firm. They didn't host one last year." The cafe's ambient chatter faded to white noise as I processed this. She's been lying to everyone, to Dad, to Emma. There's more. Maya hesitated, glancing around before continuing. 3 different men in the past 5 years filed restraining orders against someone matching her description. Different names, same MO. She gets close to wealthy men going through personal crises, isolates them from family, then... My phone buzzed. Emma's face lit up the screen. Hey, Em. Laura, thank God. Emma's voice cracked. Can you come to Dad's? Something's wrong with him. He's not making sense. I was already grabbing my coat. What happened? Sophie said he's been drinking since morning. She tried to take his keys, but he got angry. He's saying he wants to cancel the wedding, that he can't afford it anymore. My blood ran cold. Dad had already paid for most of the wedding. The vendors were booked, deposits made. I'm on my way. Don't let him leave. And Emma, don't let Sophie handle any paperwork or checks. Nothing. Maya followed me out, already pulling up her rideshare app. I'm coming with you. We found Emma on the front steps, mascara streaking her cheeks. Inside, Sophie's voice carried from Dad's study, syrupy, sweet, and reasonable. Mark, darling, just sign here. I'll take care of everything. I burst through the door. Dad slouched in his leather chair, a half-empty whiskey bottle on his desk. Sophie stood over him, manicured hand extending a document. Get away from him, I snapped. Sophie's smile didn't waver. Laura, sweetie, your father's just feeling overwhelmed. I'm helping him simplify things. I snatched the paper from her hand, a power of attorney form. My hands shook as I read it. You're trying to get control of his accounts while he's drunk? Laura? Dad's voice was slurred. When did you get here? Sophie's right, I can't. The wedding's too much. Too expensive. The wedding's paid for, Dad. Remember? We went over the budgets last month. Sophie stepped between us. Mark's financial situation has changed. He confided in me that he's been struggling. I'm only trying to help manage things. By taking control of his assets, Maya spoke from the doorway, phone raised. Like you did with Richard Martinez in Phoenix, or Thomas Chen in Seattle. Sophie's mask slipped for just a second, a flash of rage that confirmed everything. She recovered quickly, laughing. I don't know what you're talking about. Mark, these girls are obviously upset about the wedding. Maybe they should leave. Nobody's leaving, I said, moving to Dad's side. Emma, call Daniel. Tell him to bring his brother, the one who's a police officer. Sophie's composure cracked further. Mark, are you going to let them treat me this way, after everything I've done for you? Dad looked confused, struggling to focus. Sophie's been helping with the accounts. What accounts, Dad? I pressed. What exactly has she been helping with? I don't remember. He rubbed his temples. She said something about investment opportunities. Emma gasped from the doorway. The wedding fund. Dad, please tell me you didn't. Sophie backed toward the door, but Maya blocked her path. Going somewhere? Maybe to meet your other boyfriend in Chicago? The one you're still legally married to? The mask shattered completely. Sophie's face contorted with fury as she lunged for her purse. But I was faster, grabbing it before she could reach it. Bank statements spilled out, Dad's bank statements with transfer records highlighting thousands missing. This isn't over, Sophie hissed, shoving past Maya. You have no idea what you're dealing with. As her heels clicked down the hallway, I heard the front door slam. Emma collapsed into tears. Dad stared blankly at the scattered papers, the fog of alcohol and manipulation slowly lifting from his eyes. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ask your father about April 15th, 1992. Some debts run deeper than money. I looked at the date, then at my broken family, and realized this was just the beginning. The date haunted me. April 15th, 1992. I'd searched Dad's office while he slept off the whiskey, but found nothing. Now, 3 days later, I sat in Maya's living room, surrounded by old newspaper archives spread across her coffee table. Your mother's accident was in '94, Maya said, scrolling through digital records. So whatever happened in '92, my phone lit up. Sophie's number. I hit ignore. That's the 8th time today, Ethan noted from his spot on the couch. Maybe we should... Got something, Maya interrupted. April 16th, 1992. Local business deal ends in tragedy. Thomas Reed, CEO of Reed Enterprises, found dead in his office. Ruled suicide after his company's collapse. She looked up. Your dad's law firm handled the bankruptcy. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text. Ask Mark about Thomas Reed's daughter. Tick-tock, Laura. The room tilted sideways. Maya, what was Reed's daughter's name? She scanned the article. Sarah. Sarah Reed. Sophie's real name, I whispered. Ethan sat forward. You think she's... The doorbell rang. Through Maya's front window, I saw Emma on the porch. Mascara streaked down her face again. I yanked the door open. "Dad's in the hospital," she choked out. "Alcohol poisoning. Sophie found him." The emergency room buzzed with fluorescent intensity. Dad lay unconscious, tubes snaking from his arms. Sophie stood by his bed, playing the devoted girlfriend perfectly for the hospital staff. "Such a shock," she said, voice dripping concern. "Finding him like that. Thank goodness I stopped by to check on him." "Cut the act," I snarled. "I know who you are, Sarah." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes went dead. "Took you long enough, Laura. Did Daddy ever mention how he destroyed my family? How he helped cover up my father's murder?" Emma stepped back. "What is she talking about?" "Your father wasn't the noble lawyer you thought," Sophie continued. "He helped his wealthy clients hide their crimes. My father discovered their scheme. 3 days later, he was dead. Suicide. And Mark Thompson made sure the truth stayed buried." "You're lying," I said, but doubt crept in. Dad's drinking had started after Mom's death, but the guilt in his eyes whenever we mentioned his early career, that had always been there. "Am I?" Sophie pulled out her phone. "I have proof. Documents, recordings. Everything your father tried to hide. One call to the police and his reputation, his freedom, gone." "What do you want?" My voice shook. "I want him to suffer like I suffered. To watch his family fall apart, to lose everything." She smiled at Emma. "Starting with your perfect little wedding. Unless what? Transfer the house to me. The one your mother left you girls. Sign it over, and I'll keep Daddy's secrets. Refuse, and I release everything. To the police, the papers, your sister's wedding guests. Your choice." Emma grabbed my arm. "Laura, what's happening?" I stared at Dad's unconscious form, then at Sophie's triumphant face. The house was all we had left of Mom, our childhood home, our inheritance. "You have 24 hours, Sophie said, gathering her purse. "Oh, and Laura? That power of attorney your father signed while drunk? Already filed. His accounts are frozen. Good luck paying for the wedding now." She sauntered out, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and destruction in her wake. Emma collapsed into a chair, sobbing. My phone buzzed. Maya had found more about Thomas Reed's death, but I couldn't look. Not yet. A nurse entered, checking Dad's vitals. "Family only after visiting hours," she said kindly. "We are family," I replied, watching Dad's chest rise and fall. "What's left of it?" Later, in the hospital parking lot, I called Maya. "I need everything you can find on Thomas Reed's death. Every detail, every person involved." "Laura," she hesitated, "what if Sophie's telling the truth? About your dad?" I watched the hospital lights flicker against the night sky. "Then we'll deal with that too. But first, I'm going to destroy her. Even if I have to burn everything down to do it." My phone lit up with another text from Sophie. "TikTok. Time to decide, your mother's house or your father's freedom. Choose wisely." I deleted the message. Sophie thought she was playing chess, but she'd forgotten one thing. In chess, the queen can fall too. Dad's hospital room felt smaller at night. I sat in the dark, watching monitors blink their steady rhythm when his eyes finally opened. "Sophie?" he croaked. "It's Laura." I leaned forward. "We need to talk about Thomas Reed." His heart monitor spiked. In the green glow of medical equipment, I watched 30 years of carefully constructed lies crumble from his face. "How did you—" "His daughter sends her regards." I placed the old newspaper clipping on his blanket. "She goes by Sophie now." Dad closed his eyes, his hands trembling. "The house. Your mother's house. That's what she wants, isn't it?" Before I could answer, Emma appeared in the doorway. "The nurses said you were awake." She paused, sensing the tension. "What's going on?" "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just talking about—" "Stop lying to me." Emma's voice cracked. "Daniel's family already pulled their investment from the wedding. Sophie made sure they knew about Dad's financial troubles. I deserve to know what's happening." Dad reached for the call button, but I caught his hand. "No more running. Tell her. Tell us both about Thomas Reed." The story spilled out in whispers. Corporate fraud, embezzlement. Reed had threatened to expose everything. "It wasn't supposed to end like that," Dad said. "They just wanted to scare him. I didn't know they'd—" "Murder him?" The voice came from the doorway. Sophie stood there, elegant even at midnight, a manila envelope in her manicured hands. Funny how covering up one crime leads to another, and another. Emma stepped between them. Get out. You've done enough damage. Oh, sweetie. Sophie's smile was razor sharp. I'm just getting started. The house papers. Now. Or tomorrow morning, every news outlet in the state gets proof of your father's involvement in my father's death. My phone buzzed. Maya, found Reed's original case files. There's something you need to see. Now. You're bluffing, I said, watching Sophie carefully. You don't have proof. She opened the envelope, pulling out documents. Phone records, bank statements, your father's signature on papers that disappeared from police evidence, enough to reopen the case. Another buzz. Maya again. It wasn't your dad. Check your email. Urgent. If I sign over the house, I said slowly, buying time as I pulled out my phone. You'll destroy the evidence? Laura, no, Emma protested. Mom wanted us to— Tick-tock, Sophie sang. Dawn's coming. Reporters love a morning scandal. I opened Maya's email, scanned the attached photos. My hands started shaking. You know what's interesting about old case files? I looked up at Sophie. They include crime scene photos, including pictures of evidence that was logged but mysteriously vanished, like your father's diary. Sophie's smile faltered. Maya found copies. Fascinating reading, especially the part about how you discovered your father's embezzlement scheme, how you threatened to expose him unless he paid you off, how you visited his office the night he died. You're lying. But fear had crept into her voice. The police ruled it suicide because the security footage went missing, but one camera across the street survived. Maya found that too. I stood up. It shows you entering the building at 11:42 p.m., leaving at 12:15 a.m. Your father was found dead at 12:30. Sophie lunged for her envelope, but I was faster. Papers scattered across the floor. Blank sheets, all of them. No evidence, no proof, just an elaborate bluff. You killed your own father, I said quietly, and spent years planning revenge against an innocent man. Her composure shattered. He wasn't innocent. None of them were. They all protected each other, covered up everything. Security. Emma called out the door. We need security in here. Sophie backed toward the exit, her carefully constructed veneer cracking completely. This isn't over. I'll destroy all of you. With what? I held up my phone. Maya's story about Thomas Reed's real killer runs tomorrow morning. Your choice. Leave now and never come back, or stay and face the consequences. She ran. In the silence that followed, Emma collapsed into a chair. Dad stared at the scattered blank papers, tears streaming down his face. My phone buzzed one last time. Maya, police want to talk to you, both about Sophie and about what really happened in '92. What do you want me to tell them? I looked at my broken family, at the wreckage of Sophie's revenge, and realized some truths are better left buried. Tell them, I typed back, to focus on the murder she committed. The rest stays in the past. Dawn was breaking outside the hospital windows. Sometimes revenge consumes the avenger first. Police tape fluttered across my father's office door like yellow warning flags. Inside, Detective Chen methodically photographed the chaos. Drawers ransacked, papers strewn, computer screen shattered. Sophie's work? Maya whispered beside me. I nodded, watching the detective document the wreckage. She came back for something specific. Miss Mitchell, Chen gestured me over. These filing cabinets were opened with a key. Any idea how Ms. Reed obtained one? My stomach twisted. Dad's spare keys had vanished from my purse during the hospital confrontation. I'd been so focused on exposing Sophie's lies, I'd missed her sleight of hand. No idea, I lied, catching Maya's sharp glance. What was she looking for? Better question is what she found. Chen held up an empty folder labeled 92R. Your father kept detailed records. My phone buzzed. Emma, Daniel's family wants to postpone the wedding. Need you home now. Go, Maya said. I'll stay. See what else turns up. Home was worse. Emma sat surrounded by wedding magazines, tears streaming as she deleted RSVPs on her laptop. Daniel paced behind her, tie loose, hair disheveled. My parents think we should wait, he said quietly, until things settle. Things like my father being investigated for murder? Emma's voice cracked. Or his psychotic ex-girlfriend breaking into his office. My phone lit up. Unknown number. Found what I needed. Asked Daddy about Catherine Reed. Time for the real story. Laura? Emma noticed my expression. What is it? The front door opened. Dad shuffled in, looking older than his years. Girls, we need to talk. About Catherine Reed? I held up my phone. Sophie's mother? He collapsed into his chair, the weight of decades pressing him down. I should have told you everything that night in the hospital. Then tell us now, Emma demanded. Catherine Reed was Thomas's wife. After his death, she knew things about the firm's dealings. She threatened to expose everything unless, he rubbed his face, unless we paid her to stay quiet. You paid her off? My voice shook. No. I arranged for her to have an accident, the same way we arranged Thomas's suicide. His words hung in the air like poison. Sophie wasn't just after revenge for her father. She wanted justice for her mother, too. Daniel backed away, horror etched across his face. I need some air. Emma didn't even watch him leave. How many others, Dad? How many accidents? Before he could answer, Maya burst through the door. Laura, the police found something. Financial records showing regular payments to offshore accounts starting in '92. Millions of dollars, all traced back to my mother's house. I finished, the pieces clicking into place. That's why Sophie wanted it so badly. The proof was hidden there all along. Dad's phone rang. His hands trembled as he answered. Yes, I understand. I'll cooperate fully. Emma stood, wedding magazines sliding to the floor. What's happening? They're reopening both cases, he whispered. Thomas and Catherine Reed. Sophie gave them everything. My phone buzzed one final time. Check the loose floorboard in your mother's room. The truth about her death is there too. Happy hunting, sister. The word sister hit me like a physical blow. I stared at Dad, understanding dawning with horrific clarity. Catherine Reed wasn't just Thomas's wife, was she? She was your lover. And Sophie is your half-sister, he confirmed. And now she's going to destroy everything I built to protect you girls. Unless what? He pulled out an envelope. There's a private plane waiting at the municipal airport. Enough cash to disappear. Help me run, Laura. One last time. Emma's sob cut through the room. Maya's hand found mine, steadying me as I faced my father. This stranger who'd built our lives on murder and lies. Detective Chen, I called out the door, knowing she'd followed Maya here. He's all yours. As they led him away, I watched Emma crumple into Maya's arms, her wedding dreams shattering like the family myths we'd believed all our lives. My phone lay heavy in my hand, Sophie's last message glowing. Now you know what real revenge feels like. Welcome to the family, sister. The truth had won, but victory tasted like ashes in my mouth. The loose floorboard in Mom's old room came up easily, as if waiting all these years for this moment. Inside lay a single envelope, yellowed with age, addressed to me in my mother's handwriting. My phone buzzed. Sophie, read it yet? Time's running out before the wedding. Emma's wedding. Despite everything, she'd insisted on going forward, moving it to the small chapel where Mom and Dad had married. In 6 hours, she'd walk down that aisle, pretending our family hadn't imploded. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Mom's familiar script flowed across the page. My dearest Laura, if you're reading this, then the truth about Catherine Reed has finally surfaced. The words blurred as I read. Mom had known everything. Dad's affair, Catherine's pregnancy, the subsequent cover-up. She'd gathered evidence, planning to expose it all until... My phone lit up again. Detective Chen. Need you at the station. New evidence about your mother's accident. The letter slipped from my fingers. It wasn't an accident. It had never been an accident. Maya found me sitting on Mom's bedroom floor an hour later. Laura, Emma's looking for you. The makeup artist is... What's wrong? I handed her the letter, watched her face change as she read. Jesus, she whispered. Your dad didn't just cover up the murders. He orchestrated them. Both of them. And Sophie knew. My voice sounded distant, hollow. She's been playing us from the start. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. For both our mothers. My phone buzzed again. Emma, where are you? Everything's falling apart. Daniel's family is threatening to leave. Please. You have to tell her, Maya said softly. Before Sophie does. Tell her what? That our father murdered our mother? That her wedding day is built on a foundation of lies? I stood up, rage finally breaking through the numbness. Or maybe I should tell her that Sophie, the woman we've been fighting, is actually the hero of this story? Laura. No, I won't destroy her day. Not like this. The chapel was a blur of white flowers and nervous energy. Emma stood before the mirror in Mom's restored wedding dress, radiant despite everything. You're late, she said, catching my reflection. But you're here. That's all that matters. The church bells began to toll. 5 hours until the ceremony. My phone. Final chance, sister. Tell her the truth or I will, in front of everyone. I looked at Emma, at her desperate grip on happiness, and made my decision. I need to show you something. But before I could reach for the letter, the dressing room door burst open. Sophie stood there, elegant in black, holding a manila envelope. Sorry to crash the party, she said, but it's time for a family reunion. Emma's face went pale. Security. They won't come, Sophie smiled, but the police will. I've given them everything. The evidence about Thomas Reed, Catherine, your mother's accident. They're on their way now. Get out. I stepped forward, but Sophie held up her hand. You still don't get it, do you? I'm not the villain here. I'm just the daughter who watched her mother die, then spent 20 years gathering evidence while her father's killer walked free, just like you. The truth hit Emma first. She staggered, gripping the vanity for support. What is she talking about? Sophie tossed the envelope at her feet. Crime scene photos spilled out. Mom's car, the tampered brake lines. Dad's signature on documents authorizing the cover-up. No, Emma whispered. Laura, tell me she's lying. I reached for Mom's letter, but Sophie was faster. Oh, this? She snatched it from my hand. Let me read it for you. My dearest Laura, if you're reading this, then the truth about Catherine Reed has finally surfaced. Outside, police sirens wailed closer. Emma collapsed into a chair, her white dress pooling around her like spilled milk. The church bells tolled again, marking another hour closer to a wedding that would never happen. And Sophie stood in the doorway, triumphant at last, holding the final pieces of our shattered family in her manicured hands. Tick-tock, she said softly. Time to decide. Who's the real monster in this story? The sirens grew louder. Emma's tears fell on her white dress, and I stood frozen between them, realizing that sometimes there is no right side in a war of revenge, only survivors and casualties. The chapel erupted into chaos as police burst through the doors. Emma's white dress disappeared into the crowd of fleeing guests, while Sophie stood at the altar, Mom's letter raised like a victory flag. Ladies and gentlemen, she called out, her voice carrying over the panic. I believe it's time for the real ceremony to begin. I lunged forward, but Ethan caught my arm. Laura, wait. Your father couldn't be here today, Sophie continued, addressing the stunned remaining guests. He's currently explaining to police how he murdered my mother and his wife, all to protect his precious reputation. Detective Chen appeared at the side door, officers flanking her, but Sophie wasn't finished. But the best part? She locked eyes with me. Laura knew. She found the proof and chose to hide it, to protect her sister's perfect day, just like Daddy taught her. That's not true. Emma's voice cracked from the back of the church. She stood with Daniel, his arm around her protectively. Laura would never. Show them, Sophie demanded. Show them the letter, or I will. My hands trembled as I reached for the envelope, but Maya's voice cut through the tension. Wait, there's something you need to see first. She projected a video onto the chapel wall, security footage from Dad's office, but not from the recent break-in. This was older, dated the night Thomas Reed died. Sophie's triumphant smile faltered as she watched her younger self enter her father's office. Watched herself remove something from his desk. Watched him discover her, their silent confrontation playing out in grainy black and white. You didn't just find evidence of his crimes, Maya said quietly. You found proof he was going to turn himself in. That's why you confronted him that night. Turn it off, Sophie snarled. He was going to confess everything, Maya continued. About the fraud, about Catherine, about all of it. But you couldn't let that happen, could you? Because then everyone would know your mother wasn't an innocent victim. She was part of the scheme from the start. The letter slipped from Sophie's fingers. I caught it before it hit the ground, finally reading the last lines Mom had written. Catherine Reed wasn't murdered, Laura. She killed herself after Thomas discovered her role in the embezzlement. Your father covered it up to protect you girls from the truth, that sometimes the people we think are victims are actually the architects of their own destruction. Sophie's composure shattered. She lunged for the letter, but I sidestepped. We grappled at the altar, years of pain and revenge crystallizing into this moment. You wanted justice? I gasped as she clawed at my face. Or did you just want someone to blame? He took everything from me. No, I grabbed her wrists. You did that yourself, just like your mother. She screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed off the chapel walls. As Detective Chen moved in, Sophie broke free, running toward the vestry door. But Emma stood in her way, still beautiful in her ruined wedding dress. You're right, Emma said softly. Our father is a monster. But so are you. Sophie froze, something breaking in her expression. When the officers led her away, she looked small, diminished, just another daughter destroyed by the sins of her parents. The chapel emptied slowly. Daniel held Emma as she cried. Maya gathered the scattered evidence of our family's destruction, and I stood at the altar, Mom's letter heavy in my hands. What happens now? Ethan asked, joining me. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from Dad, sent from custody. I'm sorry, for everything, but mostly for teaching you that love means protecting lies. I looked at Emma, at the ruins of her wedding, at the spot where Sophie had stood declaring victory. Then I deleted Dad's message without responding. Now? I took Ethan's hand. Now we stop protecting lies and start rebuilding truth. Outside, police lights painted the chapel steps in alternating red and blue. Emma stepped into the sun, lifting her face to its warmth, and somewhere in the distance, church bells tolled, not for a wedding, but for an ending, and maybe, just maybe, a beginning. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should in September. Dad's sentencing had taken less than an hour, 20 years for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Sophie got 12, with the possibility of parole. Neither looked at me as they were led away. Emma sat beside me now, both of us watching the sunset paint the courthouse columns in shades of amber. She'd postponed the wedding indefinitely, but kept the ring. Daniel had surprised us all by staying. I found more letters, she said quietly, in Mom's old jewelry box, one for each birthday we'd have after she was gone. My hands tightened on the stone step. Did you read them? Not yet, but there's one marked for when the truth comes out. She pulled an envelope from her purse. I thought maybe we could read it together. Before I could answer, Maya appeared at the bottom of the steps waving a file. Laura, there's something you need to see. No. The word came out sharper than intended. Whatever it is, more evidence, more secrets, I don't want to know. Maya hesitated. It's about Catherine Reed. There might have been another... Stop. I stood up, feeling the weight of all the revelations, all the destruction they'd caused. Some truths don't set you free. They just start new cycles of revenge. Emma touched my arm. Laura, look what the truth did to Sophie, to us, to everyone. I gestured at the courthouse where our father would spend the next 2 decades. Maybe Mom knew that. Maybe that's why she left us letters instead of evidence. Maya sat down beside Emma, placing the file between them. So we just bury it, like they did? No. I picked up Mom's final letter. We acknowledge it. Then we choose what to do with it. The envelope opened easily, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Mom's handwriting flowed across the page, stronger than in her last letter. My dearest girls, by now you know about the lies, the crimes, the tangled web of revenge that destroyed so many lives. But here's the truth that matters. Love and justice aren't always the same thing. Sometimes pursuing one means sacrificing the other. The trick is knowing which to choose and when to stop the cycle of pain. I chose love. I chose to leave you letters of hope instead of evidence of despair. I chose to believe you would find your own way to truth in your own time. Choose wisely, my daughters. Choose love. Emma wiped tears from her cheeks. What do we do now? I looked at the file Maya had brought, then at the courthouse where Sophie and Dad would serve their sentences. Finally, I looked at the setting sun, painting everything in shades of possibility. We choose, I said, picking up the file. Without opening it, I tore it in half. Then again, letting the pieces scatter in the evening breeze. We choose to end it here. Maya nodded slowly, understanding. Emma clutched Mom's letter closer. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Dinner's ready when you are, all of you. We stood together on the courthouse steps, 3 women carrying different pieces of the same broken story. Behind us, justice had been served, however imperfectly. Before us lay the harder task, learning to live with the aftermath of revenge. I kept the dress, Emma said suddenly. Not Mom's one, it was too damaged, but mine, for when I'm ready. For when we're all ready, I corrected, taking her hand. As we walked down the steps, I thought about Sophie in her cell, Dad in his, both trapped in prisons built from decades of revenge. I thought about Mom, writing letters instead of accusations, choosing love over justice. Maya linked her arm through mine. You know there will always be more secrets, more truths waiting to surface. I know. I watched the last pieces of the file dance away on the wind, but we get to decide what to do with them when they come. The sunset painted our shadows long across the courthouse lawn, 3 shadows walking away from the past, toward whatever future we chose to build from the wreckage of revenge. Behind us, Mom's letter rustled in Emma's purse, its final words a whisper of possibility. Choose love. And so we did.
I'm Anna, and I want to share my story. Maybe it'll help someone out there. So, here's how it all started. I met Alex through my cousin, David. David had this idea that Alex and I would be perfect for each other. Alex was charming and seemed genuinely nice. We hit it off, and after dating for a year, Alex proposed. I was thrilled and couldn't wait to start our life together. David was all smiles about it. Anna, you and Alex are like a match made in heaven, he'd say whenever we met up. Our wedding was beautiful, surrounded by family and friends. Everything felt perfect. Right after the wedding, Alex suggested we move in with his mother, Ellen. He said it'd be good for us financially, and Ellen needed company after her husband passed away. I wasn't sure at first, but Alex was convincing. At first, living with Ellen was fine. She was nice enough, and we got along pretty well. I tried to help around the house and make things comfortable for everyone. 6 months later, Alex brought up the idea of me quitting my job. Anna, I've been thinking. Maybe you should quit your job and focus on the house and helping my mom, Alex suggested one evening. Quit my job? But I like my job, Alex, I replied, feeling a bit uneasy. I know, but it would be better for all of us. Mom could use more help, and you'd have more time for the house, he insisted. So, I quit my job as an accountant. It was a tough decision because I enjoyed my work, but I thought it was the right thing to do for our family. I wanted to be a good wife and help Alex and Ellen as much as I could. In the beginning, it seemed okay. I kept busy with housework and spent a lot of time with Ellen. We cooked together, and I tried to learn more about her and Alex's family traditions. I missed my job, but I told myself it was worth it for the sake of our family. Alex seemed happy with the arrangement too. See, Anna? This is working out well. We're all getting along better, and the house is running smoothly, Alex said, looking pleased. Yeah, I guess it's not so bad, I agreed, trying to stay positive. As the months went by, I tried my best to keep things running smoothly at home. I focused on making Alex and Ellen happy, even though I sometimes missed my old life and the independence my job gave me. But then, little by little, things started to change. Ellen became more demanding, and Alex's attitude towards me shifted. It was like they both started seeing me differently, more like a housemaid than a wife or daughter-in-law. One morning, I was in the kitchen making breakfast. Ellen walked in and frowned at the sight of me. "Anna, did you forget to dust the living room? It's a mess in there," she said, her tone sharp. "I did dust it, Ellen. I'll do it again after breakfast," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "Well, it doesn't look like it. You need to be more thorough," she snapped back, not hiding her irritation. When Alex came home that evening, Ellen wasted no time in complaining about me. "Alex, you need to talk to Anna. She's not keeping the house clean enough," Ellen said, her voice dripping with annoyance. "Anna, what's going on? Why isn't the house clean?" Alex asked, looking at me with a frown. "I cleaned the house, Alex. I don't know what else to do," I said, feeling frustrated and helpless. "Just do a better job. We can't have Mom upset like this," he replied, his tone dismissive. I felt like I was walking on eggshells all the time, trying to avoid Ellen's criticism and Alex's disappointment. No matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. One day, Ellen decided to have some friends over for lunch. She didn't give me much notice, and I scrambled to prepare everything. "Anna, I need you to serve lunch to my friends. Make sure everything is perfect," Ellen ordered, not bothering to ask if I was okay with it. When her friends arrived, I served them lunch and tried to be as polite as possible. But I could feel their eyes on me, judging me. "Is this your daughter-in-law, Ellen? She seems a bit flustered," one of her friends remarked, not bothering to lower her voice. "Yes, she's still learning how to manage everything," Ellen replied, casting me a disapproving look. I wanted to disappear. After they left, Ellen wasted no time in complaining to Alex. "Anna was so slow and disorganized today. Her cooking wasn't even that good," she said, shaking her head. "Anna, what the hell happened? Mom said you messed up lunch," Alex demanded, his face red with anger. "I did my best, Alex. I was just trying to keep up with everything," I replied, my voice shaking. "Well, it wasn't good enough. You need to step it up," he shouted, making me feel like a failure. Things kept getting worse. Ellen's criticisms became more frequent, and Alex's temper grew shorter. I started to dread each day, wondering what I'd be criticized for next. One weekend, I tried to take a break and spend some time for myself. I wanted to read a book and just relax for a bit. Ellen found me sitting in the living room, book in hand. "Anna, what are you doing? There's laundry that needs to be done," she said, glaring at me. "I just wanted a little break, Ellen. I'll do the laundry right after," I replied, feeling my face flush. "No breaks until all the work is done. Get to it," she snapped, her eyes cold. When Alex got home, Ellen didn't waste any time in telling him about my laziness. "Anna, what the hell? You can't just sit around all day. There's work to do," Alex yelled, his voice booming. "I wasn't sitting around all day, Alex. I just took a short break," I tried to explain, feeling my heart pound. "No more breaks. Just do your damn job," he shouted, making me feel small and worthless. I started to feel like a prisoner in my own home. I was constantly on edge, waiting for the next criticism or outburst. I missed my job, my friends, and the sense of independence I used to have. 2 years after our wedding, I had a beautiful daughter, Lily. She became my world, my reason to keep going. I found so much comfort in her. I spent all my time caring for her, trying to shield her from the chaos around us. But things were getting worse with Alex. His temper was growing, and he was getting more aggressive. One evening, when Lily was 5, everything hit a new low. Alex came home angry about something, I don't even remember what. "Anna, why the hell is this house such a mess?" he shouted as he walked in. "I cleaned it, Alex. I've been taking care of Lily all day too," I replied, feeling the familiar knot of fear in my stomach. "Your cleaning isn't good enough. You're useless," he yelled, his face red with rage. Before I could say anything, he grabbed my arm and shoved me hard. I lost my balance and fell to the floor, hitting my side against the table. The pain was sharp, and I screamed. "Mommy! Lily cried out, running towards me. Alex turned to her, his face still twisted with anger. Go to your room, Lily, he barked. Lily stood there, frozen, and then she started to stutter. Mommy, are you okay? I looked at her, my heart breaking. It's okay, baby. Mommy's okay, I said, trying to soothe her, but I could see the fear in her eyes. After that night, Lily's stuttering didn't go away. I took her to a psychologist, hoping to help her, but even after 2 years, there was little improvement. It killed me to see her like that, knowing it was because of what she'd seen. I knew Lily was watching everything, absorbing it all. She was learning from the way Alex treated me, and I was terrified she'd think this was normal, that this was how families were supposed to be. But I felt trapped. Alex had made it clear many times that everything, the house, the money, it was all his. He'd told me more than once that if I tried to leave or filed for divorce, he'd take Lily away from me. I couldn't risk losing her. She was my everything, the reason I got up every day and faced the hell my life had become. So, I stayed. I endured the shouting, the pushing, the constant fear. I kept quiet, thinking it was the only way to keep Lily safe with me. One day, I got a call from my cousin David. Anna, I have some bad news. Your mom passed away, he said gently. I felt my heart drop. I hadn't spoken to my mom in years, because Alex forbade it. I needed to go to her funeral, to say goodbye. I went to Alex, trying to stay calm. Alex, my mom passed away. I need to go to the funeral, I said, my voice trembling. He didn't even look up from his newspaper. No, you're not going anywhere. We don't have money for that, he said coldly. I felt the tears streaming down my face. I couldn't believe he was being this cruel. Alex, please. She was my mom. I have to go. I pleaded, my voice breaking. No. And that's final. You stay here and take care of the house and Lily, he said, turning back to his papers. I felt a surge of anger and sadness. I couldn't believe he was being so heartless. I knew I had to go, no matter what he said. I went to Lily's room and gently woke her up. Sweetie, we're going on a little trip. Be very quiet, okay? I whispered. Okay, Mommy, she said, her voice sleepy and confused. That night, after everyone was asleep, I packed a small bag for Lily and me. I took my savings and quietly slipped out of the house with Lily. We got in the car, and I started driving towards my hometown. My heart was pounding, but I knew I had to do this. We arrived early the next morning. I was exhausted but relieved to be away from Alex, even if just for a while. We checked into a small motel and got a little rest before the funeral. The farewell was split into 2 parts, one for family and one public. The family farewell was emotional. I hadn't seen my relatives in years, and there were a lot of tears and hugs. I felt a mix of sadness and relief being around them. During the service, my phone rang. It was Alex, of course. I accidentally hit the speaker button, and his angry voice echoed through the room. Anna, get your ass back home right now, or I swear to God, I'll file for divorce and take Lily away, he shouted. Everyone turned to look at me, their faces showing a mix of shock and pity. I felt my face burning with embarrassment. I quickly turned off the speaker and mumbled, I'm at my mom's funeral, Alex. We'll talk later. Then I hung up. For the rest of the service, I felt a knot of shame and anger in my stomach. I couldn't believe he'd humiliated me like that in front of everyone. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. After the service, David came up to me. Anna, you can't go back to that. You deserve better, he said, handing me a piece of paper with a lawyer's number on it. Call this lawyer. He can help you. I looked at the paper, feeling a mix of fear and hope. Maybe this was my chance to change things. Thank you, David, I said, feeling tears in my eyes. We spent the night at the motel again. I didn't sleep much, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. I was scared, but I knew I had to take this chance. For Lily and for myself, I had to find a way out. That morning at the hotel, after my mom's funeral, I woke up with a new resolve. I knew I couldn't keep living in fear and letting Alex control my life. My mom had left me her house and a good amount of money. It was a lifeline, a chance to start over. I looked at the phone number David gave me, the lawyer who could help with my situation. I knew I had to act, for Lily and for myself. Lily, being with me during the funeral, had almost stopped stuttering, and I wanted to keep that progress going. I took a deep breath and dialed the lawyer's number. "Hello, Mr. Thompson? This is Anna. I'd like to schedule a consultation," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Of course, Mrs. Anna. Can you come in this afternoon?" he replied. "Yes, I'll be there," I confirmed, feeling a mix of fear and determination. After dropping Lily off at David's place, I headed to the lawyer's office. I felt nervous but ready to take this step. Mr. Thompson was a kind man, and he welcomed me warmly. "Mrs. Anna, tell me everything," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. I told him about the years of control, the threats, and the violence. He listened carefully, taking notes. "We need solid evidence of the abuse, both physical and emotional," he explained. "Record everything. Keep a detailed journal." I nodded, feeling a plan forming. "I'll do that. I'll record every incident and write down everything," I promised. After the meeting, I went straight to buy a new smartphone. It felt like a small act of rebellion, a step towards taking back control. I set it up with a secure passcode and tested the recording function. I wanted to be ready for anything. Feeling more prepared, I returned to David's house to pick up Lily. She looked happier and more relaxed than I'd seen her in a long time. "Ready to go home, sweetie?" I asked, giving her a hug. "Yes, Mommy," she replied, smiling. We drove back to Alex and Ellen's house. I felt a mixture of dread and determination. I knew I was walking back into a hostile environment, but this time I was ready to fight back. As soon as I walked in, Ellen was there, glaring at me. "Where the hell have you been, Anna? Do you think you can just waltz in and out as you please?" she snapped. "I was at my mother's funeral, Ellen. I told Alex," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Well, you're back now. Get to work. This house won't clean itself," she said, turning away with a huff. I took a deep breath, turned on my new phone, and slipped it into my pocket. I started recording, determined to capture everything. I went about my chores, documenting every harsh word and insult. When Alex came home, he was furious. "Anna, what the hell were you thinking? Leaving like that without my permission?" he shouted. "I went to my mom's funeral, Alex. I had to go," I replied, my heart pounding. "You don't do anything without my say-so. Do you hear me?" he yelled, his face red with anger. "Give me your phone and purse." I handed him my old phone, glad of my foresight. I wasn't going to let him intimidate me anymore. I was gathering evidence, building my case, and planning my escape. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat down with my journal. I wrote down everything that had happened since I got back, every insult, every threat. I felt a sense of purpose, a determination to see this through. The days that followed were tough. Alex and Ellen were as hostile as ever, but I kept recording and documenting. I was building my case, piece by piece, readying myself for the fight ahead. At dinner one night, Ellen started her usual tirade. She looked at me with disdain and said, "You're nothing but a walking girl, leaving the house without Alex's permission. Disgraceful." I felt a surge of anger. "Ellen, don't insult me in front of my daughter," I said, trying to keep my voice calm but firm. Alex's face turned red with anger. "How dare you raise your voice at my mother?" he yelled, pushing me hard. I stumbled but didn't fall. He then swung his hand towards me, eyes blazing with fury. "You live here on bird rights, Anna. Don't forget that," he shouted. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange calm wash over me. "I want a divorce, Alex," I said clearly. His face turned a deeper shade of red, and he screamed, "You belong to me. You'll be my property until death." I wasn't scared this time. I had my phone in my pocket, recording everything. I knew I had proof. For the first time, I felt a sense of control. Over the next week, I continued to record every insult and threat from both Alex and Ellen. Each time they belittled me, I quietly turned on my new phone's recorder. Ellen didn't hold back. "You're worthless, Anna. Can't even keep a house clean," she sneered. I noted it all down in my journal. Every insult, every harsh word, went into my records. I knew this was crucial for my case. Alex wasn't any better. "You think you're tough now? You'll never leave me. You're nothing without me," he'd shout. I stayed calm, recording his words and adding them to my growing list of evidence. It was exhausting, but I knew it was necessary. One day, I caught Ellen berating me in the kitchen. "You're a disgrace to this family, Anna. Leaving the house like a tramp," she spat. I recorded her words, feeling more determined than ever. I knew I was building a strong case, one that would protect Lily and me. That week was tough, but I felt a new sense of purpose. I was gathering the evidence I needed to break free. For Lily's sake and for mine, I was determined to see this through. A week after returning from my mom's funeral, I couldn't take the tension at home anymore. I called Mr. Thompson, the lawyer. "Mr. Thompson, it's Anna. I've collected all the evidence. It's getting unbearable here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Anna, your cousin hired a private investigator to look into your husband. The investigator has some important findings. Can you meet him today?" he replied. "Of course, I'll go right away," I said, feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. I drove to meet the private investigator, feeling nervous but determined. When I arrived, he was waiting with a serious expression. "Anna, I've been looking into your husband's activities. He's involved in fraudulent schemes and has ties to criminal activities. The police have been watching him, but they didn't have enough evidence until now," he explained, handing me a folder. "This folder has everything. It's your freedom folder," he said. I took the folder with trembling hands, feeling the weight of its importance. "Thank you. This means everything to me," I said, my voice shaking. I got back in the car and drove home, my mind racing with thoughts of what this meant for Lily and me. When I pulled into the parking lot, Alex was there, his face twisted with anger. "Where the hell have you been, Anna? Get in the house now," he shouted, his eyes full of menace. I felt a surge of fear, but knew I had to stay calm. I didn't get out of the car. Instead, I called David. "David, I'm at home, and Alex is furious. I have the evidence. Can you call the police?" I said, my voice trembling. "Stay in the car, Anna. I'll call them right now," David replied. Alex, seeing I wasn't moving, yanked the car door open and dragged me out. "You don't listen. You think you can defy me?" he screamed, pulling me towards the house. At that moment, the police arrived, lights flashing. I collapsed on the asphalt, overwhelmed by the tension, and burst into tears. The officers rushed over, separating Alex from me. They arrested Alex and took the folder with the evidence. I sat there, watching as they led him away, feeling a mix of relief and disbelief. After the police took Alex away, Ellen was furious. She stormed into the house, her face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful woman. We took you in, and this is how you repay us?" she spat, her voice full of venom. I didn't respond. I knew it was pointless. I packed our things quickly, gathering what little I could. Lily clung to my side, sensing the tension but staying quiet. With our bags packed, I took Lily's hand and walked out of that house, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I rented a small apartment nearby, just enough for the two of us. It was modest, but felt like a palace compared to the nightmare we'd left behind. I focused on preparing for the trial. Mr. Thompson was a huge help, guiding me through the process. He assured me we had a strong case, with all the evidence we had collected. The day of the trial came, and I felt a mix of fear and hope. I walked into the courtroom, holding my head high, determined to fight for my future and Lily's. Mr. Thompson presented all the evidence, the recordings, the journal entries, and the documents from the private investigator. It was overwhelming to relive it all, but I knew it was necessary. When the judge finally spoke, I held my breath. Based on the evidence presented, I grant the divorce and full custody of the child to Mrs. Anna. The defendant is also ordered to provide financial compensation for moral and physical damages and pay alimony for life. Since Alex and Ellen didn't have the money to pay the compensation, they had to sell their house. Alex was also sentenced to 5 years in prison for his fraudulent activities and the abuse. Back at home, I told Lily the news in a way she could understand. "Are we safe now, Mommy?" she asked, her eyes wide with hope. "Yes, Lily. We're safe, and we're free to live our lives the way we want," I replied, feeling tears of joy streaming down my face. After the trial, I moved back to my hometown, to my mom's house. It felt like coming home after a long, dark journey. The house was filled with memories and a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. David, my cousin, helped me get a job at a local charity that supports women in difficult situations. It felt good to be helping others who were in similar situations, using my experience to make a difference. Lily adapted quickly to our new life. Without Alex and Ellen's toxic presence, she blossomed. Her stuttering disappeared, and she seemed happier, more confident. One afternoon, 5 years later, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated but answered it. "Anna, it's Alex. I want to see my daughter," he demanded, his voice harsh and demanding. I felt a surge of anger. "No, Alex. You lost that right. Don't bother us again," I said firmly, and hung up the phone. I looked at Lily, playing happily in the yard, and felt a deep sense of peace. We had come so far, and I was determined to protect our new life. Raising Lily, I focused on teaching her to be strong and independent, to always stand up for herself. I wanted her to grow up knowing her worth, never to be controlled or belittled by anyone. Hi there, I'm Claire. I'm 27 and I work as a smartphone app developer. I'm pretty much a homebody, love my peace and quiet, and prefer a good book or coding session to loud parties any day. My social circle is small, and dating has always been kind of a disaster for me. But all that changed one random day at a gift shop. I was just browsing, not looking for anything in particular, when I noticed this guy looking totally lost. He was standing there with a ceramic cat in one hand and a scented candle in the other, looking like he had no clue what he was doing. I couldn't help but laugh a little. "Need some help?" I asked, walking over to him. He looked up, looking relieved. "Oh God, yes. I'm trying to find something for my mom's birthday, but I'm completely clueless." I smiled. "Well, let's see what we can find. How about a nice vase? Moms love vases." "Yeah? That sounds good. I'm Tom, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Tom. I'm Claire." We spent the next few minutes chatting and looking at different vases. Tom was funny, making jokes about his lack of shopping skills, and I found myself laughing more than I had in a long time. After we found a vase he liked, we went to the checkout counter together. As we waited in line, he turned to me with a hopeful look. "Hey, Claire, would you maybe want to grab coffee sometime? I mean, if you're not too busy with all that app developing." I hesitated for a moment, but there was something about Tom that made me want to say yes. "Sure, why not? Coffee sounds good." We swapped phone numbers, and I left the store feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. I hadn't been on a date in a while, and I wasn't sure what to expect. But Tom seemed different, genuine, funny, and easy to talk to. A few days later, Tom texted me, and we arranged to meet at a cozy little coffee shop downtown. I arrived a bit early, nerves bubbling in my stomach, but when I saw Tom walk in, smiling and waving, I felt instantly at ease. We ordered our coffees and found a quiet corner to sit and chat. Tom was easy to talk to, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about our jobs, our favorite movies, and even our worst dating experiences, laughing over shared stories of awkward first dates. We'd been dating for a few months, and it was time for the next big step, meeting his parents. I was nervous, but Tom assured me they were nice people. When we got there, his mom, Mrs. Harris, greeted us at the door. She was a stern-looking woman with a cane, her eyes sharp and assessing. Tom's dad, Mr. Harris, was sitting in an armchair, barely looking up from his newspaper. "Mom, Dad, this is Claire," Tom introduced me with a big smile. "Hello, dear," Mrs. Harris said, looking me up and down. "Tom's told us a lot about you. Please, call me Evelyn. Come in, sit down." I sat on the edge of the couch, feeling like I was under a spotlight. Mr. Harris grunted a hello, but didn't say much else. "So, Claire," Evelyn started. "Tom tells us you work in tech?" "Yeah, I'm a smartphone app developer," I replied, hoping to keep things simple. Mr. Harris snorted from his chair. "Playing with toys, huh?" I forced a smile. "Not quite. It's more about creating useful tools for people." Evelyn leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "And how's the pay in that field? Decent, I hope?" I felt my cheeks flush. "It's good enough. I'm comfortable." Tom jumped in, trying to change the subject. "Mom, Dad, Claire's got a beautiful house. She inherited it from her grandmother." "Oh, really?" Evelyn's eyebrows shot up. "Where is it?" "It's not far from here. It's a cozy place, just the right size for me." Just then, Mr. Harris folded his newspaper and stood up. "I'm going to check the garden," he muttered, leaving the room. We walked outside, and I felt some of the tension ease away. Tom's parents were definitely a bit intense, but I could handle it. As we strolled through the garden, Tom looked at me with concern. "Sorry about my mom," he said quietly. "She can be a bit much." "It's okay, Tom. I can handle it," I replied, squeezing his hand. "She just wants the best for you." We spent a bit more time in the garden before heading back inside. Evelyn was waiting, her eyes still sharp but less intense. "Did you enjoy the garden, Claire?" she asked. "Yes, it's beautiful. You have a lovely home." "Thank you, dear. We're very proud of it." We chatted a bit more, and I started to feel a bit more relaxed. It wasn't the easiest conversation, but it was a start. As we got ready to leave, Evelyn gave me a quick hug. "Thank you for coming, Claire. It was nice to meet you." A few months after meeting Tom's parents, we decided to get married. We both agreed on a simple ceremony, nothing flashy. I never liked big weddings, and Tom was on board with that. His parents weren't too thrilled, but they went along with it. The wedding day was pretty low-key. We had it at a small park, just a handful of friends and family. I wore a simple dress, and Tom looked good in his suit. After the ceremony, we had a small reception at a nearby cafe. It was simple, just good food and close friends. Tom's parents were there, of course. Evelyn, his mom, looked around with a critical eye but seemed more relaxed than usual. "Congratulations, dear," Evelyn said, giving me a quick hug. "The ceremony was nice." "Thanks, Mrs. Harris. I'm glad you came," I replied, trying to keep things friendly. We mingled with our guests, keeping the atmosphere laid back. Our friends were cracking jokes and making toasts, and it was nice to see everyone enjoying themselves. We didn't have a traditional wedding cake, just a bunch of cupcakes for everyone. I picked out a chocolate one and took a bite. "These are good," I said, offering Tom a bite. "Yeah, they are," he agreed, getting frosting on his nose. As the night went on, I felt more relaxed and happy. It wasn't a grand event, but it was exactly what I wanted, a simple celebration with the people who mattered most. At the end of the night, Tom and I said our goodbyes and headed to my house, which was now our home. The house was perfect for us, with ramps and low steps, designed for my late grandmother's comfort. As we walked in, Tom's mom, Evelyn, looked around with a gleam in her eye. "This house is very convenient, Claire. Perfect for someone like me," she said, giving me a meaningful look. "Yeah, it's been great," I replied, feeling a bit uneasy. Evelyn kept looking around, clearly impressed. "This place is really something. Your grandmother must have been quite thoughtful." As the evening wound down, I couldn't shake the feeling that Evelyn had plans of her own. But for now, I focused on starting my new life with Tom, hoping for the best. So, things had been pretty smooth after the wedding. Tom and I were settling into our routine when everything took a sharp turn. It all started one evening when his parents came over for dinner. Evelyn, Tom's mom, was looking around the house with that same gleam in her eye. "It must be hard for you too, to keep up with such a big house." I shrugged, not sure where this was going. "We manage. It's not too bad." Later, as we sat down to dinner, Evelyn dropped the bombshell. "Claire, Tom, I've been thinking. My house is just too difficult for me to navigate. I think it would be best if I moved in here." I almost choked on my food. "Move in here? With us?" "Yes," she said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "It's just so much easier for me here." I looked at Tom, expecting him to say something, but he just nodded. "Mom has a point, Claire. It would be easier for her." I couldn't believe it. "Tom, we didn't even discuss this." "We're discussing it now," Evelyn said, her tone firm. "It's really the best solution." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "We need to think about this. It's a big decision." The next day, I came home from work to find movers unloading Evelyn and Mr. Harris's stuff into my house. I was furious. "What's going on here?" Tom met me at the door, looking sheepish. "Mom and Dad are moving in. Claire, it's just for a while. They need a place that's easier for them." Evelyn walked in, acting like she owned the place. "Claire, we need to move some furniture around to make it easier for me to get around." I was still trying to process what was happening. "What do you mean, move things around?" "The bedroom on the ground floor, for starters. It's the best room for us." "That's our bedroom, Evelyn," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "Well, you'll have to move upstairs. I need the ground floor room." I looked at Tom, hoping he'd back me up. "We're family, Claire. Families help each other out," he said, like it was the simplest thing. I had no choice but to go along with it. The movers finished up, and before I knew it, Evelyn and Mr. Harris were settled into our bedroom, and Tom and I were crammed into the smaller upstairs room. Over the next few days, Evelyn made herself right at home. She didn't lift a finger around the house, always saying her leg was too sore to help. I was left to cook, clean, and take care of everything while Tom acted like nothing was wrong. One evening, after a particularly long day, I sat down with Tom. "Tom, this isn't working. We need to set some boundaries." Evelyn, who had been eavesdropping, walked in. "Claire, if you have something to say it to my face." I stood up, my anger boiling over. "Fine. You're taking over my house, Evelyn. You need to help out more around here." Evelyn's face hardened. "I'm a guest here, Claire. I shouldn't have to lift a finger." I stormed upstairs, feeling trapped and frustrated. My house didn't feel like my home anymore, and I didn't know how to fix it. The invasion had begun, and I was stuck in the middle, trying to hold on to the life I had built. After Evelyn and Mr. Harris moved in, my life turned upside down. I was used to my space and routine, but now everything revolved around them. I was even forced to switch to working from home for a whole month to establish a normal life. Every morning, I'd wake up early to make breakfast. Evelyn always had a list of specific things she wanted. "Claire, I need my tea a certain way. Make sure it's not too hot, and don't forget the lemon," she'd say, her voice carrying from the kitchen. After breakfast, I'd clean up the kitchen while Evelyn watched her morning shows. "Claire, can you turn up the volume? My hearing isn't what it used to be," she'd call out. Once the kitchen was clean, I'd try to get some work done. I'd set up my laptop in the small upstairs room Tom and I now shared. But it was hard to focus with the TV blasting downstairs and Evelyn calling for me every few minutes. I'd run up and down the stairs all day, trying to keep everyone happy. It was exhausting. I felt like I was losing my mind, trying to juggle my job and their constant demands. One afternoon, I finally snapped. I was in the middle of a video call with my team when Evelyn barged in. "Claire, I need you to run to the store. We're out of my favorite cookies." I muted my mic and turned to her, trying to stay calm. "Evelyn, I'm in the middle of a work call. Can it wait?" "No, it can't. I need those cookies," she insisted, crossing her arms. I took a deep breath, feeling my patience wear thin. "You'll have to wait. I can't just drop everything." Evelyn stormed out, mumbling about how things used to be different in her day. I unmuted my mic, forcing a smile from my team. "Sorry about that, everyone. Let's get back to it." After the call, I went downstairs, hoping for a moment of peace. But Evelyn was waiting for me, a scowl on her face. "You're not being very accommodating. We're guests in your home, and you need to treat us with more respect." I was about to argue back when Tom walked in, looking tired. "What's going on here?" "Your wife is being difficult," Evelyn said, turning to him. "Claire, you need to be more patient. Mom's not asking for much," he said, clearly siding with her. "Not asking for much? She's driving me crazy, Tom." I snapped, feeling the tears well up. Evelyn gasped, putting a hand to her chest. "How dare you speak to me like that in my son's house?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Your son's house?" "This is my house, Evelyn." "Enough, Claire," Tom said, stepping in. "We're all family here. Let's just try to get along." I stared at him, feeling completely alone. "Fine, whatever," I muttered, turning away. A month later, I returned to my usual office work and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, this did not free me from household chores. I'm really tired. Life at home had become a real mess after my return to the office. Every day was a struggle with Evelyn and Mr. Harris, constantly needing something. Then, one night at dinner, Evelyn dropped a bombshell. "Claire, you're not keeping up with the housework," Evelyn said, looking at me over her glasses. "I think you should work from home more. Just like before. You'd have more time to manage things here." I stared at her, stunned. "Work from home? Evelyn, I love my team and my job. Going to the office is my only break from all this." Tom jumped in, siding with her. "Claire, Mom's right. If you're home more, it'll be easier for everyone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Easier for everyone? What about me? I need a break from all the noise and demands here. Evelyn crossed her arms, looking stern. "Claire, I need care. My leg gives me a lot of trouble, and it's hard for me to do things on my own." I felt cornered, their eyes on me, pushing me to agree. I can't just switch to working from home. I need to talk to my boss. The next day, I called my boss and explained the situation. He was understanding and allowed me to work from home. But as soon as I made the switch, things got worse. Evelyn and Mr. Harris turned into a constant source of interruptions. "Claire, I need you to make lunch. And don't forget the special soup I like," Evelyn would call out. "Claire, the TV isn't working. Fix it," Mr. Harris would demand, even though it was just a matter of pressing a button. And the TV was always blaring at full volume, making it impossible for me to concentrate on my work. I tried talking to Tom about it one evening. "Tom, I can't keep working from home like this. Your parents are driving me crazy with their demands." "Claire, they need us. You need to be more understanding," he replied, dismissing my concerns. "I'm trying to be understanding, Tom, but I'm burning out here." I need some peace to do my job, I said, my voice shaking. You're overreacting, Claire. Just try harder, he said, not even looking at me. I felt like I was losing my mind. Every day was a new demand, a new interruption. I was mentally and physically drained. The house, which used to be my sanctuary, had become a place of constant stress and noise. One day, after yet another interruption, I couldn't take it anymore. Evelyn had barged in, demanding I fix the TV again while I was on an important call. I snapped, slamming my laptop shut and storming downstairs. Enough. I can't do this anymore. I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. I'm tired, Evelyn. I can't work with all this noise and constant interruptions. I'm not your maid or your personal assistant. Tom came rushing in. Claire, calm down. What's going on? I'm done, Tom. I can't keep sacrificing my job and my sanity for your parents. This has to stop, I said, tears streaming down my face. Tom looked at me, his face serious. Claire, you need to get a grip. We're all trying our best here. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and despair. I've reached my breaking point, Tom. Something has to change, or I can't stay here. The room fell silent, my words hanging in the air. I knew things couldn't go on like this, and I needed to find a way to reclaim my life, no matter what it took. So, we were all having dinner, me, Tom, and his parents. I'd had enough of the constant stress, and I decided it was time to speak up. Listen, everyone, I started, putting down my fork. We need to talk. It's getting too hard for all of us to live in this house together. We need to figure out a way to separate. Evelyn, my mother-in-law, jumped in before I could finish. I agree, Claire. This house is very comfortable and suits someone like me perfectly. Since it's so convenient for me, you should be the one to move out. I stared at her, stunned. You're telling me to leave my own house? She nodded, looking very pleased with herself. Yes, dear. It's only logical. This house is perfect for an elderly person like me. I turned to Tom, hoping he'd support me. Tom, are you okay with this? He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. It's fine with me, Claire. Maybe it's best if you find another place. I'll hire a nurse for Mom, so she's taken care of. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were pushing me out of my own home. I realized then that Tom and his parents were taking advantage of me and trying to drive me out. I got up from the table, feeling a strange calm wash over me. All right then, I said, smiling. I picked up my phone and dialed the movers. Evelyn and Mr. Harris exchanged pleased looks, thinking I was leaving. Good decision, Claire. It's better this way, Evelyn said, almost smugly. But I had other plans. Yes, I'd like to schedule a move, I said into the phone. Please send a team to pack up my in-laws' belongings and move them out of my house. Evelyn's face went pale. What are you doing? You can't kick us out. Yes, I can, Evelyn. This is my house, I said firmly. Tom jumped up, furious. Claire, if you make my parents leave, I'll go with them. I looked at him, feeling strangely calm. Fine by me, Tom. I'd be glad to see you go. He looked shocked, not expecting that response. You don't mean that. I do, Tom. I'll send you the divorce papers tomorrow. Evelyn started to cry, calling me a cruel girl. How can you do this to us, Claire? We're family. I shook my head. Family doesn't treat each other like this, Evelyn. You pushed me too far. The movers arrived within the hour. Evelyn and Mr. Harris had to pack their things, cursing and complaining the whole time. You're heartless, Claire. Evelyn yelled as she packed her belongings. I'm just standing up for myself, Evelyn. You should have respected my boundaries, I replied, watching her pack. As they loaded their things onto the truck, Evelyn kept shouting about how I was throwing out a sick, elderly woman. But I didn't budge. I stood my ground and watched them leave, knowing I was finally taking back control of my life. Once they were gone, the house felt strangely quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet. I knew I'd made the right decision, and I was ready to move on with my life, free from their demands and manipulations. After I kicked Tom and his parents out, I knew what I had to do. I filed for divorce and cut all ties with them. It was tough, but I felt free for the first time in ages. I went back to my job at the smartphone app development company, and I finally started enjoying my work again without all the chaos at home. I heard through the grapevine that Tom was still living with his parents, and they were becoming even more moody and unbearable. It didn't surprise me. They always needed someone to lean on, and now Tom was stuck dealing with it all. One day, out of the blue, Tom called me. I was surprised to see his name on my phone. I hesitated but decided to answer. "Hello?" "Hey, Claire, it's Tom," he said, sounding nervous. "Yeah, I know. What do you want, Tom?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I've been thinking a lot about us, and I realize I made a huge mistake. I want to make things right," he said, his voice shaky. I sighed, already feeling tired of this conversation. "Tom, it's over. We've been through this." "I know, but I'm serious. I'm ready to cut ties with my parents if that's what it takes. I want you back, Claire," he pleaded. "It's not just about your parents, Tom. The problem was with you. You never stood up for me, and you let them walk all over us," I said, trying to stay calm. "I know I messed up, but I can change. I'm ready to put you first now," he insisted. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "Tom, it's too late for that. You had your chance to stand by me, and you didn't. I've moved on." I put down the phone, feeling a strange mix of emotions. It was sad, but also liberating. I had made the right decision for myself, and I wasn't going to go back to that toxic situation. In the following weeks, I threw myself into my work. My team noticed the change in me, and my boss even commented on how much more focused and productive I was. I also reconnected with some old friends and started going out more. It felt good to have a social life again without the constant stress hanging over me. One evening, I was out with my best friend, Sarah. We were having drinks at our favorite bar, catching up on everything. "So, how's the single life treating you?" Sarah asked, grinning. "Honestly, it's great. I feel like I've got my life back. No more drama, no more stress," I said, raising my glass. We laughed and talked about all the things we wanted to do now that I was free. I even started thinking about taking a vacation, something I hadn't done in years. I'm Maria. My family is full of linguists, and languages were a big part of my life growing up. My mom and dad were both professors, always talking about the nuances of different languages at the dinner table. I guess it rubbed off on me because by the time I finished college, I could speak 5 languages fluently: English, Spanish, French, German, and Italian. I met David when I was still in college. He was in my circle of friends, and we clicked right away. David is tall, with dark hair and a kind smile that always made me feel at ease. He came from a wealthy family, which always seemed to be a point of stress for him. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, were very clear about wanting him to join the family business as a financier, but David had other plans. David and I used to hang out a lot, sharing our dreams and frustrations. He would often vent about his parents' pressure. "Maria, I just can't see myself crunching numbers all day," he'd say, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I want to work with animals, help them. That's what makes me happy." David secretly started volunteering at a local vet clinic, learning everything he could about animal care. He was so passionate about it, and I admired that about him. He was determined to make his dream come true, even if it meant going against his parents' wishes. "Maria, you should have seen this little puppy today. It was so scared, but once I calmed it down, it was all wagging tails and happy barks," he'd say, his face lighting up with joy. That's amazing, David. You're doing something really special, I'd respond, genuinely happy for him. We were just friends, but I always felt a deep connection with David. We understood each other in a way that was rare. I loved languages, and he loved animals, but we both shared a passion for following our dreams. As graduation approached, David's parents intensified their pressure, and he became more conflicted. But through it all, we supported each other. We'd often meet up to vent and encourage one another. "You've got this, David," I'd say, giving him a reassuring smile. "You're going to be an amazing vet someday. And you, Maria, are going to be the best translator out there," he'd reply with a grin. It was a typical Friday night, and our group of friends decided to have a little get-together. We gathered at John's place, a cozy apartment that was perfect for our small party. There was a good amount of wine, some snacks, and lots of laughter. David and I were there, as usual, sharing stories and enjoying each other's company. "Maria, you've got to try this wine," David said, handing me a glass. "It's from a vineyard in France, supposed to be really good." "All right, but only if you promise not to let me get too tipsy," I replied with a grin, taking the glass from him. We talked for hours, our conversation flowing effortlessly. It felt different that night, more intimate, like we were seeing each other in a new light. As the party started to wind down, we found ourselves sitting on the couch, a little apart from the rest of the group. "Maria, do you ever think about what it would be like if we were more than friends?" David asked suddenly, his voice soft but serious. I was taken aback by his question, my heart pounding in my chest. I've thought about it, David," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Before I knew it, we were leaning in, and then our lips met in a gentle kiss. It was electric, like something out of a movie. We pulled back, staring at each other in shock and wonder. "Wow," David said, his voice shaky. "I didn't expect that." "Me neither," I replied, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. "But I'm not complaining." We sat there for a moment, the air between us charged with a new kind of tension. It was like the room around us faded away, leaving just the two of us in our own little world. "Do you want to get out of here?" David asked, his eyes never leaving mine. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We quietly slipped out of the apartment, hand in hand, and made our way to his place. The walk there was filled with nervous laughter and stolen glances, both of us trying to process what had just happened. We went inside, and the next few hours were a blur of kisses, laughter, and whispered confessions. It was like we were finally allowing ourselves to feel what we had been holding back for so long. Everything felt right, like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. The next morning, I woke up in David's arms, feeling a mix of happiness and nervousness. I gently nudged him awake, needing to talk about what had happened. "David, wake up," I whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. He stirred, opening his eyes, and giving me a sleepy smile. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," I replied, feeling my cheeks heat up. "We need to talk about last night." After that romantic night, David and I decided we didn't want to wait any longer. We wanted to get married. We were so sure of our love, but we knew his parents might be a hurdle. When we told them, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson weren't thrilled. They had known me for years as David's friend, but as his wife? That was a different story. They didn't like that I wasn't from a wealthy family. Still, they agreed to our wedding but insisted on a prenuptial agreement. They wanted to make sure I wouldn't claim any of David's money. "You'll need to sign this prenup, Maria," Mr. Anderson said, handing me the documents. "It's just to protect the family assets." I glanced at David, who nodded reassuringly. "I understand," I said, taking the papers. Despite the cold reception, they allowed us to live in David's late grandmother's apartment. It was a beautiful place in the city center, with windows overlooking the square. The apartment was elite and expensive, with excellent repairs and new furniture. It felt like a fresh start. After the wedding, we moved in, but Mr. Anderson made it clear that one room, filled with his mother's belongings, was off limits. Those items are priceless to me, Maria, he said sternly, handing me the key. You are not to enter that room. I nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. I won't, Mr. Anderson. I promise. With that, David and I began our new life together, ready to face whatever challenges came our way. Living with David was like a dream at first. We were so happy in our new place, but soon enough, that bliss got a serious jolt thanks to his sister, Laura. Laura started dropping by unannounced, making herself right at home. One Saturday morning, just as I was getting ready to enjoy a peaceful breakfast, she showed up. Hey Maria, Laura said, strolling into the kitchen without even knocking. What's for breakfast? I forced a smile, trying to keep my annoyance in check. Good morning, Laura. I was just about to make some eggs. Make enough for me too, will you? She said, plopping down at the table and scrolling through her phone like she owned the place. I took a deep breath and started cooking, reminding myself to stay calm. David walked in, looking a bit surprised to see his sister. Laura, didn't know you were coming over, he said, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, thought I'd surprise you guys, she said with a smirk. This place is amazing. I could get used to hanging out here more often. As days went by, Laura's visits became more frequent and more invasive. She'd stay over without asking, and every morning it was the same thing. She'd demand breakfast, criticize my cooking, and make snide comments about me living in her grandmother's apartment. Maria, you should really learn how to cook better, she said one morning, pushing her plate away. You're living here on borrowed time, you know. That was the last straw. I clenched my fists and looked her straight in the eye. Laura, you can't just come here and disrespect me in my own home. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. Your home? This is my family's apartment, Maria. You're just here because my parents are too nice to kick you out. David had enough. He walked over and stood next to me, glaring at Laura. Laura, you need to show Maria some respect. She's my wife, and this is her home too. Laura's face twisted in anger. Of course you'd take her side. Mom and Dad always loved you more, gave you everything, and now you're letting her take what's left. Enough, Laura. David's voice was firm. If you can't respect Maria, then don't come here anymore. Laura stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I let out a sigh of relief, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. David hugged me, whispering, "We'll get through this, I promise." The next day, my phone rang, and it was my mother-in-law. She didn't even bother with pleasantries. Maria, I've heard terrible things about how you're keeping the apartment, she snapped. Laura says it's a mess, and you're not being a good hostess. I was stunned. Mrs. Anderson, that's not true. I've been doing my best to keep the place clean and welcoming. Clearly, your best isn't good enough, she retorted. We're very disappointed with David's choice to marry you. We think you should consider leaving. When I told David about the conversation, he was furious. They have no right to talk to you like that, Maria. We'll figure something out. Days turned into weeks, and the tension with David's family kept building. Laura continued her visits, though less frequent after David's outburst. She still managed to make every interaction a challenge. As the days passed, I focused on keeping our home a sanctuary, a place where David and I could escape from the outside world and his family's constant scrutiny. We knew we had to stick together and stay strong, no matter what challenges came our way. David worked for his father's company, but I was having a hard time finding a job as a translator. I went for interviews, but the jobs offered were way below my skills and pay expectations. One evening, I was home alone, feeling a bit down about another unsuccessful interview. I was just about to get comfortable when I heard the door unlock. I wasn't expecting anyone, so my heart jumped into my throat. In walked David's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, without so much as a knock. They just strolled in, acting like they owned the place, which technically, they did. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to hide my annoyance and shock. "You could have at least called." Mrs. Anderson looked around, her face twisted in disdain. We don't need to call before coming into our own apartment. What if I was naked? I shot back. You can't just barge in like this. Mr. Anderson ignored me, looking around with a critical eye. We've decided to install surveillance cameras to make sure you're keeping it in order. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Cameras? You're kidding, right? This is our home, not a prison. Just then, David came home, looking tired but quickly realizing something was wrong. What's going on? He asked, glancing between me and his parents. We're installing cameras, his father declared. To keep an eye on how things are being maintained here. David's face turned red with anger. This is ridiculous. You can't do that. Yes, we can, Mr. Anderson snapped. You owe everything to us. You should be grateful and keep quiet. Mrs. Anderson turned to me, her eyes cold. You're a gold digger, Maria. You don't even have a job. You're just living off my son's money. That was the final straw. I looked straight at David and said, I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce. I'm leaving. David's eyes widened in shock, but then he nodded. If you leave, I'm going with you, he said, his voice steady. Mr. Anderson's face turned even redder. If you walk out, you're cut off. No inheritance, no support. Mrs. Anderson added, we'll move Laura in here for better control. That's when I had an idea. I winked at David and whispered, trust me, play along. David gave a slight nod. All right, we'll get a divorce, he said, turning to his parents. They looked pleased with themselves. Good, Mr. Anderson said. We'll install the cameras and give Maria a month to find another place. Mrs. Anderson smirked. You're doing the right thing, David. We'll have Laura move in next week. After David's parents left, he turned to me with a confused look. Maria, why did you agree to a divorce and ask me to play along? He asked, his eyes full of worry. I gave him a reassuring smile. Just trust me, David. Do what I ask, and it'll all make sense soon. He sighed but nodded. All right, I trust you. We hugged, and I could feel the tension in his shoulders ease a bit. A week later, David had to go on a business trip to Hong Kong for his father's company. As soon as David flew out, Laura and her boyfriend Rick showed up, just as his parents had promised. Hey, Maria, Laura said with a smirk, walking in without knocking. We're moving in to keep an eye on the place. You know, since you'll be leaving soon. I forced a smile. Welcome, Laura, Rick. Just one thing, don't go into the locked room or touch anything there, okay? Laura's eyes lit up with curiosity. Why not? What's in there? Just family stuff, I said, trying to sound casual. She made a sly face and nodded. Sure, we won't touch it. For the next week, I tried to get along with them, but it was tough. They treated the place like a party house, spending David's father's money and having a blast. Every night was the same, drinking, loud music, and their constant attempts to put me down. Laura spent a lot of time near the locked room, smoking and clearly itching to get inside. She tried to act casual, but I could see the curiosity eating at her. Every time she made a move toward the door, I was there, making sure she couldn't sneak in. A week later, I decided it was time to put my plan into action. I walked into the living room where Laura and Rick were lounging. Hey, I'm going to visit a friend for a few days, I said, grabbing my coat. I'll come back later for my things. Laura's eyes sparkled with glee. Really? That's great. Have fun. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. Thanks. Just remember, don't go into the locked room. Yeah, we got it, Laura said, practically shooing me out the door. I left the apartment and checked into a nearby hotel, finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. I knew Laura's curiosity would get the better of her, and she'd try to get into that room the moment I was gone. Settling into my hotel room, I felt a strange mix of anxiety and satisfaction. I knew the next few days would be critical, but I was ready for whatever came next. David trusted me, and I was determined to see this through, no matter what. The morning after I left the apartment, I got a video call from Laura. I answered it, not sure what to expect, but ready for anything. Laura's face popped up on the screen, looking way too pleased with herself. She was standing in the middle of the now empty locked room, grinning like a cat that caught the canary. "Hey Maria, guess what?" she said, her voice dripping with smugness. "I broke the lock and threw all your crap out. Oh, and I changed the locks on the front door. Good luck getting back in now." I couldn't help it, I burst out laughing. Laura's smug expression faltered, confusion replacing her glee. "What's so damn funny?" she snapped. I wiped a tear from my eye, still chuckling. "Laura, you clueless fool. I took all my stuff with me. That room wasn't mine. It was packed with your dad's things. He specifically told me not to touch any of it." Her face turned ghostly white. "What? No, you're lying." "Nope," I said, smirking. "Those were your dad's precious belongings. He made it clear they were off limits." Laura's eyes widened in horror. She turned to Rick, who was lounging in the background. "Rick, you moron. We've got to get those things back from the trash, now." Rick jumped up, looking panicked. "What do you mean? We tossed everything last night. It's probably all gone by now." I watched the chaos unfold, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "Laura, maybe start thinking about what your dad will do when he finds out you trashed his stuff." Laura's face crumpled, and she began to cry, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "This can't be happening. We're so screwed." I couldn't hide my satisfaction as I watched her meltdown. "Well, Laura, maybe next time you'll listen to people when they warn you." With that, I ended the video call, feeling a wave of relief and triumph. Finally, karma had caught up with Laura, and it was a sight to see. I leaned back in my hotel chair, savoring the moment. It felt good to see her get a taste of her own medicine. After David got back from his business trip, he came straight to my hotel. We decided to head back to the apartment together, hoping to finally sort out the mess Laura had caused. As we arrived at the apartment, we were greeted by flashing lights and police officers. We walked up to find Laura, looking disheveled and panicked, talking to the police. Rick stood next to her, looking just as freaked out. Laura was waving her arms, trying to explain something. "It was a break-in," she was saying, her voice shaky. "All the valuable stuff from the locked room was stolen." Just then, Mr. Anderson pulled up, his face a mask of fury and concern. He stormed over to the police, demanding to know what was going on. "What's all this about a robbery?" he barked. One of the officers turned to him. "Sir, the young lady here claims the apartment was broken into and items were stolen from a locked room." Mr. Anderson's eyes narrowed. "We need to check the surveillance footage. There are cameras installed in the apartment." Laura and Rick turned pale at the mention of cameras. They exchanged panicked glances, clearly realizing the trap they had walked into. The officer nodded. "All right, let's take a look at that footage." We all went up to the apartment, and Mr. Anderson quickly accessed the camera system. As the footage played, it showed Laura and Rick breaking into the locked room and throwing out all the items. A heavy silence fell over the room as everyone watched the damning evidence. Laura's face was a picture of horror, and Rick looked like he was about to faint. Mr. Anderson's face turned a dangerous shade of red. "Laura, what the hell have you done?" he roared. Laura started to cry, her voice shaking. "Dad, I'm sorry. I thought these were Maria's things. We didn't know what else to do. You lied to the police. You tried to stage a robbery to cover up your stupidity." Mr. Anderson exploded. "I can't believe this." The police officer cleared his throat, looking stern. "Ma'am, you've made a false report. That's a serious offense." Mr. Anderson shook his head, his voice trembling with rage. "Because of your actions and this deceit, I renounce you, Laura. You're disinherited." You are no longer my daughter." Laura collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. "Dad, no. Please don't do this." The officer nodded to his partner, and they started filling out a report. "We'll need to take you both in for questioning about this false report." Rick's face went white. David squeezed my hand, his face a mix of anger and relief. "I can't believe she tried to pull this off." As the police escorted Laura and Rick out of the apartment, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It had been a long, hard road, but we had finally come out on the other side, stronger and more united than ever. David's father did exactly what he said he would. He cut Laura off completely. No more money, no future inheritance. Her boyfriend ditched her too, seeing as he was only in it for the cash. Now Laura stuck in a tiny, run-down apartment, scraping by on her own. It's a tough break, but she had it coming. Meanwhile, David and I decided it was best to cut ties with his controlling parents, at least for a while. David quit his father's company and finally opened his own veterinary clinic, something he's always dreamed of. I'm so proud of him. And as for me, I landed a great job as a translator for a big international company. We're both working hard, but it's worth it for the freedom we have now. We're still in a rented apartment, but it feels like home because it's ours. No more constant surveillance or judgmental eyes watching our every move. We're making plans for the future, like buying our own house and starting a family. It's exciting to think about what's ahead. One morning, over breakfast, David and I were talking about our plans. "Maria, have you thought about where you'd like to buy a house?" he asked, sipping his coffee. I nodded. "Yeah, somewhere quiet, but not too far from the city." "What about you?" "I'm thinking the same," he said, grinning. "A place with a big yard for the dogs." I laughed. "Of course, you'd want space for the dogs." "That's fine by me. And what about kids? Are we still thinking a couple of years down the line?" David looked thoughtful. "Yeah, I think that's a good plan. Let's get settled first, make sure the clinic is running smoothly, and then we can start thinking about kids." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Sounds perfect. We've got time, and we're building a good life together." Later that day, we visited his new clinic. It was a cozy place, already bustling with clients and their pets. I watched David in his element, caring for animals and talking to their owners. He looked so happy and fulfilled. One weekend, we decided to visit some open houses, just to get a feel for what was out there. We found a few places we liked, and it was exciting to imagine our future home. "Maria, can you picture it?" David asked as we stood in the backyard of a charming house. "Kids playing here, maybe a dog running around?" I smiled, feeling a warm glow inside. "Yeah, I can. It feels right, doesn't it?" "Absolutely," he said, putting an arm around me. "We're building something real, something lasting." As we left the house, I felt a sense of contentment and anticipation. We were on the right path, and the future looked bright. The stench of burnt rubber and disappointment filled the air as I glared at the lifeless hood of my car. It was supposed to be a quick dash to meet a new client, not a roadside breakdown on a deserted highway. I sighed, pulling out my phone and dialing roadside assistance. The robotic voice on the other end promised a wait time of at least an hour. Just as frustration threatened to boil over, a beat-up pickup truck screeched to a halt behind me. A grease-stained hand emerged from the driver's side, followed by a man with a grin as wide as his overalls. "Car trouble, huh?" he drawled, his voice warm and friendly. "You could say that," I replied, a touch of exasperation in my voice. "Looks like I'm stuck here for a while. I'm Nellie." He chuckled. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'm Alex, and this here is my territory. Most likely fix you right up." He worked quickly, his movements efficient and practiced. As he replaced the battery, we fell into conversation. I learned about his auto repair shop, a local gem known for its honesty and fair prices. He, in turn, listened patiently as I explained the world of investment portfolios and stock markets. "Sounds complicated," he said with a scratch of his head. "All that fancy math and paper pushing. Gimme a good old wrench and a rusty engine any day. At least I can see what I'm working with, real things, not some numbers on a screen." I snorted. "Don't knock it till you try it, Alex. Investments are the future. They allow people to grow their wealth, secure their dreams." We continued to debate the merits of his wrenches versus my spreadsheets as he finished the job. By the time my car roared back to life, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. "Thanks, Alex," I said, shaking his hand, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the now functional engine. "Actually, I was wondering, maybe you'd like to grab a coffee sometime? Not to talk cars and investments, but just, to chat?" The surprise on his face quickly melted into a smile. "Coffee sounds good," he replied, scratching the back of his neck. "How about tomorrow morning?" "My treat, as a thank you for putting up with my greasy fingers on your fancy car." We exchanged numbers, and as I drove away, the setting sun felt a little brighter, the future a little less certain, but a whole lot more exciting. A year flew by in a whirlwind of greasy spoon dinners, late-night strategy sessions, and stolen kisses under starlit skies. We married in a simple ceremony, surrounded by close friends and the slightly bewildered gazes of Alex's family. His parents were kind, old-fashioned folks, but his sister, Sarah, however, was a different story entirely. At 28, she was a permanent resident at their house, her days spent flitting between manicures and shopping sprees, funded entirely by her parents' generosity. The first few months of married life were a blissful blur. We settled into a cozy starter home near Alex's parents' place, a practical choice according to him. My dreams, however, stretched far beyond the picket fence. I envisioned a sprawling mansion, a testament to the financial empire I was building, complete with a gleaming basketball court for the future mini-me's I yearned for. Sunday dinners at Alex's parents' house were an exercise in forced cheer. Sarah, draped in the latest designer outfit and sporting a fresh manicure, would regale us with tales of her weekend getaway to some exotic locale. Her parents beamed with pride, oblivious to the growing strain on their finances. One particularly tense Sunday, after Sarah had announced her plans for a month-long European cruise, Alex's dad, a kind-faced man named Henry, cleared his throat and spoke hesitantly. "Alex, son," he began. "Since we retired, things have been a bit tighter than we expected. We were hoping—" His voice trailed off, his eyes pleading. Alex, ever the dutiful son, immediately understood. "Sure, Dad. How much do you need?" My stomach lurched. Here we go again, I thought, bracing myself for another financial dance with Sarah's bottomless pit of needs. "Just a little help to get us through," Henry mumbled, avoiding my gaze. "Retirement ain't exactly what it's cracked up to be on a fixed income." "Don't worry, Dad," Alex said reassuringly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We'll take care of it." Later that night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Alex," I said softly, "how much are you giving them this time?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, honey, it's family. They need a little help, that's all." "A little help every month adds up, Alex," I pointed out. "And what about Sarah's little European jaunt? Don't you think they might need that money more?" Alex bristled. "Don't you start with Sarah. It's none of your business how she spends her money." "It becomes my business," I shot back, my voice rising. "When it affects our finances. We're a team, remember? And frankly, I'm tired of feeling like an ATM for your entire family." The words hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the comfortable silence that usually filled our bedroom. Alex's jaw tightened. "You just don't understand what family means," he said, his voice laced with anger. "You have no relatives, so you wouldn't get it." That hit me like a sucker punch. It was true, I didn't have any family. My parents had passed away when I was young, leaving me a small inheritance that I had used to put myself through college. But the lack of a family wasn't a choice I had made, and it certainly didn't make me any less capable of understanding loyalty and love. One Tuesday evening, the phone rang, shattering the fragile peace in our house. It was Sarah, her voice choked with sobs. "It's Dad," she stammered. "He's in the hospital. Cancer. They say it's bad." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Alex, his face pale, grabbed the phone from my hand and spoke in hushed tones. When he hung up, his eyes were red-rimmed. "He's not going to make it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The doctors are giving him a few weeks, maybe a month at most." The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits, tear-filled goodbyes, and whispered promises. As the inevitable drew closer, the question of the funeral arrangements loomed large. One evening, Sarah, her eyes red and puffy, announced, "I've talked to the funeral home. It's going to be a bit expensive, but Dad deserves the best, right?" Alex, still raw with grief, readily agreed. "Of course, honey, whatever it takes." "It comes to..." Sarah hesitated, then blurted out, "$50,000. My jaw dropped. $50,000 for a funeral? That seemed like a staggering sum, especially considering the modest means of Alex's parents. "50,000? I echoed, unable to contain my surprise. "Isn't that a bit excessive?" Alex shot me a withering look. "Don't be insensitive, Nellie. It's Dad's funeral. We have to honor him properly. Can't you just be supportive for once?" The accusation stung. Supportive? I had spent the past few weeks juggling work and hospital visits, all while trying to navigate the emotional minefield that was his family. But apparently, that wasn't enough. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. $50,000 is a lot of money. Maybe we should talk to your mom and see what she thinks." Before I could finish my sentence, Alex exploded. "Don't you dare bring Mom into this," he roared. "This is about family, and you clearly don't understand what that means. You only care about money." His words were a slap in the face. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. Here we were again, at the same impasse. My attempt at financial responsibility construed as greed, my concern for his family dismissed as cold-heartedness. The sting of defeat lingered long after I transferred the $25,000 to Alex. Swallowing my pride and doubts, I did it for us, for our future. Maybe, I naively hoped, this would be the olive branch that ended the fight and brought us back together. But Alex, it seemed, had other plans. That night, he packed a duffel bag, his face etched with a stony resolve. "Where are you going?" I asked, my voice barely a croak. "I need to be with Mom," he said curtly. "She's taking this really hard." "But what about us?" I pleaded, a desperate hope flickering in my chest. He didn't answer. Just a gruff goodbye and the slam of the front door, leaving me alone in the echoing silence of our once happy home. The next few days were a blur of tearful phone calls to Alex's mom, unanswered texts, and a gnawing emptiness that settled in my gut. Finally, I received a call from the funeral home, a reminder of the looming farewell. Wiping away a fresh wave of tears, I dressed in black, the weight of the unresolved conflict a heavy burden on my shoulders. Arriving at the funeral home, a cold dread slithered down my spine as I noticed the deserted parking lot and the closed doors. "Excuse me?" I stammered, approaching the receptionist, a kind-faced woman with weary eyes. "Yes, ma'am," she replied politely. "I'm here for the service of Mr. Henry Johnson?" I inquired, my voice trembling slightly. She consulted the ledger on her desk, her brow furrowing slightly. "The service for Mr. Johnson concluded yesterday, dear." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Yesterday? But I..." My voice trailed off, confusion clouding my thoughts. "Alex didn't tell me." The woman offered a sympathetic smile. "Perhaps there was a misunderstanding. It was a simple cremation, as per the family's wishes." Cremation? The image of the extravagant funeral Sarah had described sent a jolt through me. $50,000 for a cremation? The pieces just weren't fitting. Anger, cold and sharp, began to replace the initial shock. Furious and confused, I stormed out of the funeral home, the receptionist's words echoing in my head. The betrayal gnawed at me, a bitter pill to swallow. Where was Alex? Why hadn't he told me? More importantly, where did all that money go? With a burning determination, I steered my car towards Alex's childhood home. Pulling into the driveway, I saw him emerging from his car, a glint of surprise flashing across his face. "Alex!" I shouted, flinging open the car door. "What is going on? Where did all this money go? And why wasn't I informed about the change in plans?" "You didn't care," he shot back, his voice laced with hurt and accusation. "You only think about money, never about family." The audacity of his words left me speechless. "Family?" I echoed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Since when does family lie and manipulate?" The anger simmered within me, threatening to boil over. Before I could unleash a torrent of accusations, Alex reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. It was a legal document, the stark black letters screaming at me, "Divorce papers." "You want a divorce?" I asked, the question catching in my throat. "I can't live with someone so indifferent," he stated, his jaw clenched. "You have your investments and stocks, but you have no heart. I put the house up for sale. We'll split the proceeds." His words felt like a physical blow. The life we had envisioned, the dreams we had shared, all dissolved in a single, acrimonious conversation. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. With a final glare at his retreating figure, I stormed towards my car, my every step fueled by a righteous anger. Just as I reached the driveway, a flash of red caught my eye. Sarah, her face plastered with a wide, fake smile, strutted towards the house, a gaggle of designer shopping bags swinging in her arms. And parked right beside her, gleaming in the afternoon sun, was a brand new sports car. "What the hell, Sarah?" I barked, my voice laced with ice. "Where'd you get the dough for that beauty?" Sarah's smile faltered for a split second, then returned with a touch of defiance. "Oh, hey, Nellie," she drawled, feigning surprise. "This? Inheritance, honey. Dad left me a little something extra." Her words were unconvincing. There was no trace of grief on her face, no mourning in her eyes. Just a smug satisfaction that grated on my every nerve. Ignoring the urge to confront her, I stormed towards my car, the image of the divorce papers burning a hole in my pocket. There was only one place I needed to go. The familiar chime of the funeral home door announced my arrival. Behind the reception desk sat Emily, a classmate from high school. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. "Emily, thank God it's you," I blurted, rushing towards her. "Hey, Nellie," she said, a smile stretching across her face. "What brings you here?" "It's a long story," I sighed, forcing a smile. Instead of launching into the whole mess, I cut to the chase. "I need some information about a recent service, Mr. Johnson." Emily quickly pulled up the file on her computer. "Ah, yes. Cremation, as per the family's wishes. Is there anything else I can help you with?" My heart hammered in my chest. "Cremation?" I echoed, the word tasting foreign on my tongue. "The cost?" Emily tapped a few keys on the keyboard. The total came to $5,237. "I can print you a duplicate copy of this receipt, if that would be helpful." Relief flooded me. "Yes, please," I croaked, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Emily. You have no idea what this means to me." My knuckles were white-hot as I gripped the steering wheel, the evidence burning a hole in my pocket. The facade of Alex's childhood home mocked me with its familiarity. Taking a deep breath, I marched towards the front door, my purpose fueling my steps. The moment I stepped inside, the first thing I saw was Alex, Sarah perched beside him like a bad omen. His mother sat on the couch, a tear-stained tissue clutched in her hand. The air crackled with a tense silence. Hey everyone. I greeted, my voice surprisingly steady. Alex's mother, her eyes red-rimmed, looked up with a flicker of surprise. Oh, Nellie. Why weren't you at the service yesterday? Service? I scoffed. No one told me it was postponed. I thought it was today. I offered Alex's mother my condolences, a hollow gesture at best, and then turned to Alex. Can we talk in private? I asked, my voice low. There are no secrets in this family, he shot back, his jaw clenched. Especially not from someone who isn't considered family anymore. His words stung, but I refused to let him get under my skin. Reaching into my purse, I pulled out the check and slammed it on the coffee table in front of him. Here's the money for the funeral, I stated, my voice firm. Now, where'd the rest of it go? Alex stared at the check, his brow furrowed in confusion. What rest of it? Don't play dumb with me, I snapped. The check is for $50,000. The funeral home said the service cost $5,000. Explain. The confusion on Alex's face seemed genuine. His eyes darted towards his sister, a silent question hanging in the air. This is ridiculous, Sarah sputtered, jumping to her feet. You just can't come in here throwing accusations around. But her outburst backfired. Alex's mother, who had been silently observing the exchange, spoke up. Wait, she said, her voice shaky. Your father had some money saved for his funeral. And I gave Sarah $10,000 to help with the arrangements. I did a quick mental calculation. $50,000 from us, plus $10,000 from you, Mom, that's $60,000. The service cost $5,000. Where's the remaining $55,000? My gaze landed on Sarah, a question mark etched on my face. Sarah's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Her cheeks flushed crimson, and she shifted uncomfortably under my stare. Finally, she mumbled, well, I just saw this amazing car, and I couldn't resist. Instead of the anger I expected, Alex placed a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. Hey, he murmured. It's not a big deal. You just needed a new car. We can figure something out next time. My blood ran cold. Not only had Sarah stolen the money, but Alex was condoning her actions? Did he not see the gravity of the situation? Not a big deal? I repeated, my voice laced with incredulity. She stole money, Alex. From her own father's funeral fund. Alex glared at me, his voice icy. You wouldn't understand, Nellie. You don't have family. You only care about money. His words hit me like a physical blow. The anger simmering inside me boiled over. I slammed the signed divorce papers in front of him. Take them, I spat, my voice trembling with rage. And then tell your precious sister to give me back my $25,000. Otherwise, I'll sue her for fraud. Alex opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand, silencing him. You know what, Alex? Save it. There's nothing left to say. The weight of the past few days finally settled on my shoulders, a crushing burden. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. But I blinked them back, refusing to crumble in front of them. 2 weeks flew by in a blur of paperwork and emotional turmoil. The house, once a symbol of our future, sat on the market. Then, one sunny afternoon, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I was met with Sarah, a defiant glint in her eyes. Here, she said, shoving a thick envelope into my hand. Your precious money. Happy now? Her smug demeanor ignited a flicker of anger within me. Don't act like you're doing me a favor, I retorted. That money was meant to honor your father's memory, not fuel your shopping sprees. She rolled her eyes, clearly unfazed by my words. Whatever, she muttered, turning to leave. Just don't come crying to me when you realize you're all alone and nobody loves you. The house eventually sold, and the money was split with Alex. The divorce became final, a clean break from a toxic past. Months passed, filled with new experiences and a newfound sense of freedom. Then, one day, the phone rang. The caller ID displayed Alex's number, a number I'd long since deleted from my memory. Hesitantly, I picked up. "Hello?" "Hey Nellie," came Alex's voice, laced with a desperation I hadn't heard before. "I need your help." "What kind of help?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "It's Sarah," he sighed. "She got into some serious debt, gambling debts, mostly. The creditors are after us, Nellie. They've already taken the house, the car repair shop." "What do you mean, us?" I clarified, my voice tight. "You and Sarah are no longer us, Alex. We're divorced, remember?" "Come on, Nellie," he pleaded. "Don't be like that. You have money, you can help us out. Besides, you're all alone anyway. No kids, no family, nobody needs you." His words felt like a slap in the face. All the progress I'd made, all the independence I'd built, dismissed in a single, insensitive sentence. Anger, hot and righteous, surged through me. "Nobody needs me?" I echoed, my voice low and dangerous. "Let me tell you something, Alex. I may not have a husband or kids, but I have friends, hobbies, and a life that doesn't revolve around cleaning up the messes of manipulative siblings. The answer is no, Alex. Absolutely not. And don't you ever call me again." With that, I slammed the phone down, the finality of the click echoing in my ears. There would be no second chances, no desperate pleas. I had built my own family, a family of friends, of experiences, of personal growth. And that, I realized, was more than enough. Years of experience had honed my intuition into a finely tuned instrument, and the melody it played was one of prosperity. The reward for my dedication? A sprawling new house on the city's fringe, a testament to my self-reliance and blooming independence. As I unwound on a plush chaise lounge, a cool glass of Sauvignon Blanc in hand, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. This was the life I had built, brick by brick, on the foundation of self-belief. The tranquility was broken by the insistent buzzing of my phone. An unknown number flickered on the screen. Usually, such calls were met with a dismissive silence, but a strange sense of unease gnawed at me. With a sigh, I swiped the answer button. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. A smooth, unfamiliar voice flowed through the receiver. "Is this Nellie?" My mind raced, searching for a connection to the voice. It held a hint of amusement, a touch of flirtation. "Yes, speaking," I replied, my voice regaining its usual confidence. "This is Michael," the voice continued, "from the gallery down on Elm Street. We met a few weeks ago at the opening, remember? The one with the abstract expressionist exhibit?" A memory flickered to life. The opening, the vibrant paintings, the man with the captivating smile and a passion for obscure French filmmakers. A smile tugged at the corner of my lips. "Michael, right. Of course, I remember." "Excellent," he chuckled. "Listen, I was wondering if you might be free for dinner this Friday? There's this new tapas place I've been dying to try, and—" "Sounds perfect," I replied, a genuine smile warming my voice. "What time should I pick you up?" "No need for that," he countered. "Let me be the gentleman. I'll swing by your place at 8. Looking forward to it, Nellie." The call ended, and I cradled the phone, a giddy feeling bubbling in my chest. Life wasn't just about financial success, it was about building connections, fostering new experiences. And as I gazed out at the breathtaking sunset, the future stretched before me, an open road brimming with endless possibilities, and a man named Michael waiting to share the journey.